This is MRN Outloud on MRN.com, presented by Bloomin' Mondays at Outback Steakhouse. And also brought to you by Hercules Tires. Ride on our strength.
MRN Out Loud comes your way after the full package. At Las Vegas Motor Speedway, we saw the effects of the air ducts, the lower horsepower, the higher downforce. Joey Logano goes to victory lane for the first time this season. The defending champ punches his playoff ticket early this year instead of waiting like he did last year. Kyle Busch wins 2 of the 3 races, the truck and Xfinity races, but doesn't get the weekend sweep. And a lot more happened, and it seems like, Joey, some fans are still not satisfied. I understand everything's a work in progress, but I think this was better.
The result of the race when you have, let me say, who were the 4 drivers that ran for the championship in Homestead?
There was Harvick.
Yep.
There was
Yep.
Logano.
Yep.
There was Truex. And
no,
not Truex.
no,
It was the big 3 and Joey.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
You had 3 of those drivers contending for the win yesterday. So the cream still rises.
I don't think Truex was as strong as he normally has been.
No, they weren't. Top 10, it's kind of funny when you consider that a failure. But when you have the drivers that were contending for the win with Joey and Brad and Kyle and Kevin and Kurt Busch ran at the top 5.
With strategy.
The cream is going to rise to the top regardless of what configuration. I'm not saying package ever again unless I get something from UPS.
You're an anti-package guy now?
Unless I get something from FedEx or UPS.
But the point is, good is going to be good no matter what obstacles you throw at them.
When I was on the roof for the 267 laps and I was working harder, I felt that if the spotter driver is working harder, then the vision of what I'm watching is closer and more intense.
There's more going on.
I don't see how people... I would like to find one of these people that go, oh, the racing wasn't any better. And go, what do you want? Was it the best race ever in Las Vegas? No. But as we're going to learn later on, sometimes the configuration of the race cars isn't the problem, right? I don't know how much better we could make Vegas.
I agree.
It's a mile and a half track.
Right.
We
relatively recently repaved.
We run New York marathons. We run Boston marathons. We have the Tour de France. Are those guys battling? No.
By the way, after our talk last week, I meant to tell you this just as an aside. After our talk about bowling last week, I got sucked into watching some PBA this weekend in the hotel room, and it was really interesting.
Fox does an amazing job this year with bowling, with the stats and the stat tracker and being able to follow the drivers.
But anyway.
But we're going on these marathon visions of the Tour de France and these 267 lap races. They're long races. You're not going to have 40 guys, 40 wide, inverted.
But that's the way all the races used to be back in the day. That's what I keep being told. I
just don't understand what. And was I a fan of the pack? Was I a fool?
Oh, you almost did it.
You
almost violated your own rule.
Was I a fan of this configuration? No, I'm not. Because the lack of horsepower took us. So when we caught a lap car, the penalty we paid for the aero, we couldn't get on the gas and recover immediately.
The throttle response was less.
Exactly. And it took us another 2 laps to get the motor wound up just to get back to position to pass the lap cars.
To get a good run.
So the aero penalty is so great, and now the motor is down so low that that's what I don't like.
Well, then help me understand this. My understanding was that with these air ducts that take the air in the front and blow it, for lack of a better term, out the wheel wells and make a wider wake. Daniel Hemrick, I had a hospitality with him this weekend in Las Vegas, and he described it as if you're on the water and you see the wake that your boat makes and how the waves kind of go out like a triangle shape and spread out further. It's supposed to be like that to make a bigger pocket of air that you can ride in without getting all that turbulence. So if that's the case, why then is it not easier to make a move?
Okay, because using your example, you're now behind the boat in this boat, and there's more wake. That wake is disturbing because now our cars...
But it's spread out wider, right?
It's spread out wider, which means it's creating a larger area of disturbance. And our cars now have more downforce than they've ever had. we're almost over 3,000 pounds of downforce. We ran a little over 2,000. We are 50% higher on downforce, right? So everybody needs that. Well, if I'm riding behind the boat and I'm looking through this wake, my car has less downforce than the car that I'm trying to pass. So that's why it's difficult. So now a lesser
You need
speed,
the air on it to keep the car stuck down.
Exactly,
Okay,
right.
I got you.
Yeah, so what the side ducts do is they create a area that when you get closer to guys, it creates the racing better. But when you're following behind that tugboat, directly behind, it creates more of a disturbance and makes it a little more difficult to pass. Now, when you get away from that, i.e. guy on the bottom lane, guy on the top lane, then you're more equal with those aero ducts. You don't take the big penalty because, A, we've slowed the cars down, we have more downforce, now we can race more side by side.
Yeah.
That accomplished exactly what we wanted to. But by introducing a better result in certain areas, we've increased the penalty in other areas.
Yeah.
And that's kind of
there
where
are consequences for any action.
Look, if you listen to any of the interviews post-race, other than Joey Logano, maybe Brad, maybe Kyle Busch, maybe,
Kyle Busch wasn't thrilled.
NASCAR wasn't thrilled with what they saw, right?
But it was progress.
It was progress, and that's what we have to look at. We have an idea. Sometimes you have to identify what to do wrong in order to do right. And we've made gains, but it's not 1,000%, oh, this is the one thing.
And there is no one thing.
No, and that's what we have to understand, because we take the same car and we race on a flat half-mile track, and we race on a 2.5-mile oval, and we race on a road course, and we race on a half-mile bank. It's the same car, and sometimes...
But there are variations in the package configuration, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and there are, and we're trying to adapt...
That are track-specific.
We're trying to adapt this vehicle to a racetrack, and sometimes the package doesn't fit the program.
Yeah. All right, we'll talk about some numbers that go to what Joey was addressing there. We've got a thing from Joey Logano that he said post-race that I think everybody needs to hear as we move forward with this. We'll also talk a little bit more about Joey's soapbox. You want to make sure you're here for that. We got a lot to come on MRN Out Loud. Don't forget, it is Bloomin' Monday. If you're checking this out on a Monday, Kevin Harvick with a 4th-place finish. That's a top 10. That means if you go to Outback Steakhouse, you get a free Bloomin' Onion. Tell them Little Joey sent you, and you'll get that. More to come on MRN Out Loud.
I'm not blooming good, I'm blooming great. Put a shrimp on the barbie and sizzle my steak. Woo, I want that onion to bloom, and it get in my senses like a sonic boom. No rules, just right. So bold, so nice, and I'm so ready for that Outback steak tonight. Outback Steakhouse, that's what it's all about. Outback Steakhouse. Blooming great.
Whatever you drive, wherever you go, Hercules Tires will get you there, whether you're running on dirt or running a job. Our dependable, high-quality tires are the perfect fit for your needs. For unmatched value, selection, and warranty with industry-leading road hazard protection, there's only one choice, Hercules Tires. To learn more, visit HerculesTire.com or call 800-677-9535. Hercules Tires, ride on our strength.
The area's largest motorcycle marketplace comes to life at Daytona International Speedway, March 8th through the 17th during Bike Week 2019. Stop by the World Center of Racing and take a spin on the newest rides in the free demo ride area. Stroll down Harley-Davidson Thunder Alley, check out the annual Hot Leathers Fashion Show, and visit the displays and aftermarket vendors. Marketplace admission, demo rides, and parking are free. For more information on race tickets to the Daytona TT and Daytona 200, visit DaytonaInternationalSpeedway.com.
Yeah, that was more intense than I wanted it to be. There's been plenty of times here where we've led a lot of laps, and by the stats, this is probably our best racetrack or close to it, and we've never won. And that's the most important stat to have. And usually something happens the last run, and Brad gets a little better, and for some reason his last pit stop they make a good change, and he becomes the fastest car and he wins. And he's done that here plenty of times. And I looked in the mirror. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening again! I can't believe it!" And he's able to get by me, and I was like, "Oh, I hope this didn't happen. I can, keep trying to get in front of him again." And was able to get a run on a lap car and be able to work down into the corner and be able to clear him. But I burnt my tires off so bad trying to get back in front of him that I was just working so hard inside the car trying to maintain the gap. And I was in a good shape, and then I caught a lap car, and he went up into the top lane, which is where I was running, and I followed him right in there, and I was like, oh, no. And I just lost a ton of time and then brought Brad close enough to where he can catch a draft off of me to close up the rest of the gap. And I thought, man, good thing this thing's 400 miles. I just told the Pennzoil people, let's not make this race any longer. That was just the right length. 405 would have been a little bit too long. So it is cool, though. I remember sitting up here on the stage when they announced Pennzoil was going to be the sponsor for this race, and how important it was for me to win this thing. So it's cool to be able to deliver for them.
There you go, Joey Logano. How about this? The driver of the 22 car won his 22nd career cup race in the Pennzoil 400 if you're into numerology. But he said something interesting there that goes to your point about getting behind that lap car and losing some time and allowing Brad to get back to him there toward the end.
It's just a bigger penalty. And again, what occurs is these motors, it's a twofold problem. You drive down the corner with 3,000 pounds of downforce on your car.
Mm-hmm.
You drive down, you get in behind that boat wake that you referenced 5 minutes ago, and all of a sudden you're in the chop of the wake, and now your car has 2,500 pounds of downforce. You're not getting around the corner.
And it's driving differently
at the same speed you did before, because now with our new configuration, these motors are more like restrictor plate motors. They take a little time to get going.
Mm-hmm.
We used to run 1 lap in qualifying to go fast. Now we can run almost 3 to go fast.
Speaking of that,
That's
let's
the
talk
difference.
about qualifying here in a minute. That was something.
Yes, so that's the difference in these motors. Take a little while longer to get going again. Well, if you're down in 3,000 pounds of downforce and all of a sudden you've lost 500, your corner entry speed was still the same as it was. Well, now your car goes up the track, so now you're out of the gas, right? Well, you're out of the gas on a motor that takes 3 laps to get going again. There's your problem.
Or at least to reach its maximum speed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the guy behind you, and I haven't mentioned the fact that this spoiler looks like a billboard on the back of your car.
It's gigantic. It's so big they had to make the top of it clear. So they can see through it out the rearview mirror.
Some would say ginormous.
Ginormous.
When you get out of the gas, because the cars have so much drag, it's like putting the brake on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So now, we've lost 500 pounds of downforce. We can't turn the wheel. We had to lift on the throttle to stop our turn because we were going up the track.
To keep it from going up into the wall.
Right. And now when we get on the gas, it takes 3 more laps to get going again.
Mm-hmm.
There's the problem. You have a guy that's 10 car lengths back. He didn't experience the wake because he's running a higher line.
Mm-hmm.
He never had to lift, and his car is going through the center faster than yours. So that's what they want that, right? They want the ability for the second place guy to catch the first place guy. They want that. But it's the penalty that the guys are taking in 4th and 8th place and 10th place. You know, we fell back to 30th in the 21 Wood Brothers car with Paul, and we fell back to 30th due to traffic, and then took us all afternoon to get back in the top 15.
Yeah. I think Kyle Busch was the only guy who really came up through the traffic quickly, but then he reached a point where it was harder for him as he got to the better cars. He couldn't advance as quickly.
Yeah, and we saw Kyle Larson, who had a really goofy too many men over the wall.
That happened more than once.
Did you see what happened to him though?
He reached down and the guy put his hand on the ground in the pit box.
The guy lost.
He was still over on the correct side of the wall.
Yep, the guy standing on this side of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
He lost his balance catching the tires. His job is to stand there and catch tires.
Right, so the tire changer doesn't have to worry about that.
Seems simple enough. I'm going to stand here and catch tires, but they're 80-pound tires. As he goes to get these tires, he loses his balance where the wall is. And instead of flipping over to pit road, he just reaches over and stops himself from face planting.
Mm-hmm.
The minute his hand, it can hit the tire. The minute his hand hits the ground.
It's like a game show and the buzzer goes off.
Yep. Too many men over the wall. You're like,
it happened 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because the guy wasn't over the wall.
Right.
Our crew guys aren't going to do handstands around the car.
Right.
It should be a foot thing.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully
I agree.
NASCAR said they're looking at that.
Yeah,
they understand.
that may be tweaked.
Yes, that was a rule that was followed to the letter of the law, right? The guy's hand. But you had guys, it was very difficult to pass. But again, sometimes these cars aren't the problem.
They may not be. However, I will say to the folks who believe that every race back in the day used to finish 40 wide, backwards, and on fire every single week, that the numbers show that this race at Las Vegas was better than a year ago at Las Vegas. Let's look at some of these numbers. I've got some right here for you. In 2018, there were 2,379 green flag passes. This time, 3,345. In 2018, 9 green flag passes for the lead. In 2019, this most recent race, 47. As a matter of fact, if you add up the green flag passes for the lead over the previous 3 races before this one, 46.
Yeah.
There were 47 this past Sunday. So that is progress. That is improvement. But I think in the way society is now, we're impatient with everything. Everything has to be fast now, right when I want it. But there is no one easy switch you can flip to make everything perfect, or they would have already flipped that switch.
See, and I actually believe that the issue we're having with today's society is that the silent majority are the people that are happy.
Right.
Okay, it's the negative minority that has the microphone, and they give 2 people radio shows.
People complaining are more vocal than people who are satisfied.
Yeah, and they give 2 guys radio shows for 7 years to get on the radio and complain.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the most active passing numbers ever was back when we used to tandem race.
Mm-hmm. And people, I liked it, but,
I loved it.
People hated it.
Correct. Because
some people hated it.
Because the silent or the major minority complained.
Loudly.
Right? And then you're always going to have that group of people. So yesterday provided great numbers to prove that we moved in the correct direction. But again, because there wasn't a flaming arrow jumping through a hoop over a bus with a clown show and a bull and tightrope wires across the start-finish line as they flipped over end.
But that that used to happen every week.
Every week, evidently.
Yeah.
So that's what I really believe it's. And I'm not going to use the word irregardless because it's not a word, but regardless of what NASCAR does, you're going to have the same voices. Might be different people. You're going to have the same voices go, that was terrible.
Yeah.
That was horrendous. That was the worst race I've ever seen today. It was the only race you saw today.
Yeah.
So.
Well, to that point, we got a clip from Joey Logano, and this is in his post-race media availability after he got the victory at Las Vegas. And he was asked about what you're talking about, that vocal minority, if you will, who loudly complained that this was terrible. Listen to what Joey Logano says about that.
People love to complain. You want to get me going? Here we go. People love to talk about negative stories, and I don't know why. I don't understand it. There's a lot of positive going on in our world, and I'm not just talking about NASCAR racing, but there's plenty of good things that happen, and every time we turn on the news, I'm sick of seeing negative stories because there's all these good stories that get overshadowed by someone writing a negative story or someone getting on Twitter and being all big and bad and writing something that makes them feel better because they want something different. Sometimes those people know what they want. That's my opinion. I think when I look at where we are as a sport, there's a lot of great things coming down the pipeline for us. There's a lot of great decisions that are being made. There's a lot of collaboration of race teams and drivers and sponsors and racetracks. Everyone's working together. TV partners, media, all you guys we're all working together, and there's a lot of good things happening because we're working together. And I think the fans are going to benefit from that. I don't know what else to tell you, man. When you have cars racing side by side to the start finish line after how many laps was that last run? A long run, 100 laps ish. 100 laps, yeah. What else you want? I don't know. They're just trolls on Twitter, man. That's what they are.
That's it.
All right, so that's my roundup. That's the point of right there that you were just describing. Joey Logano said exactly the same thing after the race. There is a vocal minority, if you will, that is going to complain. I firmly believe, and you and I have talked about this before, if NASCAR came out tomorrow with a policy that said we're going to give every race fan $1 million, that vocal minority would go, well, why isn't it $2 million?
Oh, I got to pay taxes. Now it's going to increase my tax
Right.
bracket. What am I going to do? Do you know the responsibility it's going to take to manage $1 million? This is crazy. I'm outraged. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
That would happen.
And you can't fix it. you can't fix it. But, if you don't like what you're watching, just don't watch.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's forcing you. And that's the thing about, and I love another partner here at MRN's Dave Moody. And one of the things he always gets people on about how they hate him, he's like, you're following me on Twitter.
Right.
But
so you want to hear what I'm saying.
He proves the point that people simply follow or watched to complain.
Yeah.
That's the epitome of that.
I think that's part of the age that we're in with the social media and that type of stuff. People can spew and hide behind that Twitter account.
Yep. But again, we saw Kyle Busch going for 3, and quite honestly, did Brad and Joey have the fastest cars? No, Kyle was pretty fast. He had the pit road penalty late that caught him in the back, but he was going to go for that triple header, which is, again, unprecedented. We're seeing performance from him that is
it's Hall of Fame worthy. There's no other way to say it. He's going to the Hall of Fame. You don't have to like him, but if you're honest, you have to admire his skill.
Yep, and we saw Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick. Again, we're not going to talk about Cup drivers in any other series, but those two guys pressured Kyle and raced each other, and Tyler stepped over the line and made a wreck there at the end.
But Bell climbed out of the car saying, man, that was fantastic.
Exactly. That was a lot of fun because that's exactly what those guys appreciate, knowing that you were against the big matador of the field, right?
And remember, over the years, you mentioned the 7 years we've been doing this, every single time we ask the truck guys and Xfinity guys, do you want to race against those Cup guys? They say yes.
I've never heard anybody say otherwise, except for the same guys that complain that the racing in Vegas was terrible, right? It's the same group of people that are just, it doesn't matter what we do because we've given too many examples of the prejudice with the Dale Juniors versus the Kyle Busch in the same series and the same cars. But one of the things that we're going to talk about is we have a little bit of a soapbox here. We're going to get on
Joey's
a little bit of soapbox here.
Listen for the bubbles. We'll drag it out here in just a minute. Let's take a quick break first and do that.
Take a quick break?
Uh-oh.
Okay. Well,
I don't think we can do that.
Well, what I'm going to say is that to finish up, and we started talking about it earlier, is we're spending so much time trying to fix the race cars, trying to fix the drivers, trying to fix the engines, that simply because we race on such a diverse circuit, that sometimes the tracks that we're on aren't conducive to the kinds of racing that we want to see. And that's really the way we talk about these 1.5 mile tracks that aren't variable banked. And now that we're running wide open throttles at very high downforces, it's simply a simple economic of mathematics. The shortest point between two lines is the shortest distance, right? And if I can go around the bottom and it's a shorter
I don't think that
distance,
was exactly right, but I follow what you mean. I got you. I'm with you.
Shortest
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
The bottom line is going to be faster than the middle line. It's going to be faster than the top line. So the guy simply is going to run the bottom. A lot of these tracks that we're racing on as 1.5 mile tracks are simply not conducive to the best racing. It's good, okay racing.
Because of the way the cars have evolved over the years.
Right.
They weren't designed for what they're doing now.
That's it. So sometimes we have to understand that the tracks aren't the cars aren't the problem, that the tracks are. And let's just acknowledge that and move on and go, okay, when we go to Vegas, this is the kind of race we're going to get. When we look at the Kentucky Derby, sometimes it rains. Sometimes that race isn't conducive to the fastest horse. It's what it is. It's not the horse's fault.
Right.
It's not the jockey's fault. It's the asphalt.
There you go.
There you go.
All right. That's Joey's soapbox. We got to take another break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about Kyle Busch's weekend when he almost got the sweep. We'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to see at Phoenix as well, because that's going to be different than what we've seen in the first 3 races already. Stay here.
I'm not blooming good, I'm blooming great. Put a shrimp on the barbie and sizzle my steak. Woo, I want that onion to bloom, and it get in my senses like a sonic boom. No rules, just right. So bold, so nice, and I'm so ready for that Outback steak tonight. Outback Steakhouse, that's what it's all about. Outback Steakhouse. Blooming great.
ISM Raceway got some major upgrades. NASCAR fans, come and see what all the buzz.
You have a racetrack that's created an unbelievable challenge for all of this restart.
Bumping.
Check up! He catches the 38! The 38 spin!
And cheering is about.
Kyle Busch is going to win in the desert!
Mark your calendar for the Ticket Guardian 500, March 8 through 10. Get the best remaining tickets now at ismraceway.com.
You're smart, got your own trucking business, making it happen. What if I told you there was a place online where you could connect with other smart owner-operators just like you? It's an online community called Team Run Smart, where people share advice on truck maintenance, fuel savings, healthy habits on the road, and so much more, all to make your business more profitable. And it's all free. Visit teamrunsmart.com today to check it out. You'll be glad you did. teamrunsmart.com, brought to you by Freightliner Trucks.
Back on MRN Out Loud, Woody Kane, Joey Meyer chatting about what we saw at Las Vegas Motor Speedway and what we're going to see coming up at Phoenix this weekend, because that will be a little bit different. Kyle Busch.
A new package.
You weren't going to say package.
I was just saying a new package.
Yeah. It's different. It's different.
It's a different configuration. It's not the full Monty. It's not the half Monty. It's just different.
It's a Monty.
And that was the one thing about Vegas. It wasn't we had the full package there, because quite honestly, Phoenix has the full package, right?
Well, depending on how you look at it.
There you go. That's my
point.
point.
All the elements they incorporated in these off-season changes were in play at Las Vegas. It'll be a little different at Phoenix. We'll talk about that in a moment. First, Kyle Busch almost gets the sweep, and he was asked early in the weekend about doing that, and it is, as you mentioned, something that is very, very rare in our sport.
Yep. It's the competition level in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series to do a triple. It's a monumental feat. He's 4 races, I believe, from having 200 total. Again, we haven't seen the number 200.
That's across all three of the national series.
We haven't seen 200 since Richard Petty did it in 1984 in the Cup Series. Mm-hmm. And again, the racing was different. They were racing 60 times
a year. Yeah, because they finished 40 wide backwards and on fire at the stripe every week.
But they were racing 65 times a year and multiple races in the weekends. And again, the competition at that time was a little less because he was a factory back driver.
Right.
We could have arguments on how he got to 200. The simple fact that Kyle Busch is coming up on 200 total wins in the 3 series is
amazing.
It's Hall of Fame. Yep.
He was asked about that early in the weekend. Here it is.
For me, though, I feel like Vegas is one of the more challenging ones because I'm not great here on the Cup side. You know, we've had some decent runs, a few strong runs. Last year was good for us in the spring race. We ran second. I felt like we could have given Harvick a run for his money if we ever could have restarted up front, but we never did. And, with this new package, though, with the race and what we saw in practice today and with what we think the race is going to be like tomorrow, it's going to be a whole new different ball game. So I don't know what to expect or how to figure what our chances are for the victory going after a win tomorrow. I mean, I'd like to say, yeah, we can do it, sure. But as far as whether I got a top 5 car or a top 10 car, it's so hard to tell right now with being in the pack and driving around guys and seeing other guys really fast and drive away from you. And then 3 runs later in practice, you drive right up to them and blow them by. So it's hard to give a description on that.
Now, keep in mind that the way the rules are now, Kyle can only run 5 truck races, 5 Xfinity races. He's used up 2 of the truck races and won them both.
Yep.
He really got pressured by Brett Moffitt in the truck series. The Xfinity race was fantastic on Saturday. Those guys were all over each other. As you mentioned, Reddick and Bell were all over Kyle, and he had a fight to the finish with that one. So there's some really good racing going on there. But he's only got 3 more truck races he can run this year, and I think 4 more Xfinity races for the rest of the season now.
Yeah, he's doing what he has to do to bring the sponsors in. Again, if you want to hear our opinion on Kyle in the series, you can listen to multiple podcasts from last year's episodes. And even as early as last week, we talked about why he's running the series from a sponsor standpoint. We're not going to beat that dead horse. But again, the guys that are competing against him, they don't want to beat a back marker guy. They want to beat the best. And right now, there's nobody that's better, even though he didn't win Sunday. And I'm not taking away from anybody that did win, i.e. Joey Logano and Team Penske. But Kyle Busch is simply the guy to beat. And if he doesn't beat himself, as again, a mistake yesterday prevented him from really competing against that win.
Yeah, that was a pit road speeding penalty, I believe, that got him back in traffic. Still got back up to 3rd and was charging toward the end of that race.
We were expecting a little unknown tidbit. So now when we have an EFI, these electronic fuel-injected motors, the teams have figured out a way to put a pit road limiter on their cars. So we've actually tried to get away from the driver having to stare at the tack.
And not a speedometer, a tachometer.
A tachometer
right.
and some lights. Well, the teams have figured out a way through throttle positions to manage and have a little more leeway to manage that speed. That we don't even talk about. That's a very unknown. You might be hearing it first right here. Well, NASCAR didn't like the fact that we were controlling our pit road speeds with the throttle at the end of 2018. They made an adjustment to the software and said, "Oh, we were getting rid of that." As you know, teams are smart. They found a back way around it, and we've been using, and I say all three manufacturers have been using a way to manage our pit road speed with a throttle limiter set. It's a throttle position sensor that matches up with a RPM. That RPM is your pit road speed. This week, they said no more. If we catch anybody using it, it's going to be a severe penalty. So yesterday, we on the roof were very adamant about our drivers staying on our lights, thinking about the RPM, and running all the way down pit road. We were expecting more pit road penalties, and we didn't see that many, but unfortunately, Kyle Busch was one of those.
At least not for speeding.
Exactly right. Pit road speeding, we were expecting to see a little more, but we didn't, and unfortunately, Kyle Busch did get wrapped up in that one, but that's, they tend to push the limits to begin with.
All right, we've got a little more to talk about. Phoenix is coming up, and the package will be different.
I'm not blooming good, I'm blooming great. Put a shrimp on the barbie and sizzle my steak. Woo, I want that onion to bloom, and it get in my senses like a sonic boom. No rules, just right. So bold, so nice, and I'm so ready for that Outback steak tonight. Outback Steakhouse, that's what it's all about. Outback Steakhouse, blooming great.
Hi, this is Mike Backley. Join me and the rest of the MRN crew every Tuesday night for NASCAR Live. We'll get you up to date with the latest news stories and ready for the upcoming race weekend.
That's what it boils down to. Anything can happen in between, and we've seen it the last few years, kind of how crazy things can get.
Hear exclusive interviews, expert analysis, and much more.
Wheel that thing, brother, wheel it! That's why you never give up, guys. Never give up.
It's NASCAR Live this Tuesday night at 7 Eastern on the Motor Racing Network.
Check out MRN.com for a new podcast series called The Tough Trucks of NASCAR. 25 years and still trucking. We'll take you back to some great races.
Benson to the bottom of the racetrack. This is the race for the lead and the win at Michigan.
And some wild moments.
One truck is in the air. Matt Crafton upside down.
And we'll let you hear the stories behind them.
He was too bullheaded to let me pass him, and I was too bullheaded to let him have it.
Download the show for free on iTunes and at MRN.com.
Note there, you heard the promo for the Tough Trucks of NASCAR podcast series. Episode 3 has dropped. 4 is coming out this week, and it is fantastic. A lot of the stars of the sport talked to us about 25 years of the truck series. It's hard to believe it's been that long. Jack Sprague was in the building along with Mike Skinner. A lot of the guys who made the sport what it is, Ron Hornaday, they all sat around and reminisced about some of the things and some of the guys that pissed them off over the years and some of the things that happened, as well as some of the guys who are making some noise now in the sport. So check out that podcast series, The Tough Trucks of NASCAR. Check it out at MRN.com. You can catch all the episodes there. Now,
hot off the presses, breaking news. Hearing it first. Yep. Hot off the presses. You might get ink on your fingers. It's so fresh.
What's that mean?
3rd week in a row, NASCAR was the highest rated sporting event on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So evidently, what I'm getting is everybody that hates the sport
made you look.
Must have been watching.
Mm-hmm.
They must have been watching to hate the sport. And that's cool. Keep watching, guys. You guys are doing a hell of a job hating our sport, driving up our ratings, because that's what sponsors look at. I'm not a big fan of ratings, because I still think it's an archaic system. But for some reason or another,
it doesn't really capture what people are doing with streaming now, for example.
Well, and it just doesn't, because it's still and
it could be on different networks year to year.
Well, and it's a goofy system when we take one person and he's averages out for 10,000 people, right?
That's just math. That's statistics.
Like, I'm a huge fan. I don't have a Nielsen's box, right? I'm a huge bowling fan. I don't have a Nielsen's box for bowling. But 3rd week in a row, NASCAR is the highest rated sporting event for the weekend, and that's pretty good. That's, again, thanks to all the haters. Appreciate you guys really caring about the sport to drive it in the ground, and you're making it more popular. That's good.
Yeah. All right, let's move ahead. We're going to Phoenix this week.
We are going to Phoenix.
It's a mile track, but everybody calls it a short track. However, we'll have all the downforce that we've been having and we go back to approximately 750 horsepower. We'll have the brake ducts instead of the air ducts that we had at Las Vegas. It'll be similar in that respect to what we had at Atlanta, but with more horsepower, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 more horsepower. What are we going to see, do you think?
No, I think the drivers are going to be excited. We're going to see corner speeds and center speeds a little faster than we're used to, but we're going to have on-throttle time, off-throttle. On-throttle time will be less than what we saw at Atlanta because guys were running wide open through the whole corner. So we're going to – brakes might be an issue. We're going to see a little different because we have so much downforce that you're able to drive in that corner so much deeper, but we still got to get the car stopped and turned around the corner. Guys are excited for Phoenix because they do get their old engine package back. But the configuration is last year's engine with this year's aerodynamics, and it'll be a new toy for these guys to go play with because right now we haven't been able to test it at this kind of facility with this kind of configuration.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about, last year ISM Raceway in Phoenix for their second race flip-flopped the start-finish line. It's now on what was the backstretch. So you're now coming off what was turn 2. Yep. That's now turn 4, and a lot of guys said they really enjoyed the dynamic. From a spotter's perspective, how crazy were those restarts?
The restarts were really cool, but the one thing I enjoyed because, again, the spotter stand at Phoenix is in the old turn 1-2 stand. Now it's right almost just before the start-finish line as we come into 4, come into 3, exiting turn 4. What's really nice is we don't have those big wad-ups anymore that we used to see on the old turn 4 coming to green flags when a guy would miss his shift or get out of the gas because we were so far away, we couldn't pick any of that up to help our drivers and our teams get through the mess.
Some teams, I remember a couple of years ago, Chad Knaus, for example, on the pit box was kind of helping spot down there because you couldn't see from where the spotter stand was.
One of the more famous guys that would do it was Jeremy Brickhouse would actually get a random guy, a friend, to go to the normal spotter stand. He would actually go to the grandstand over in turn 4 and spot the race from up in the grandstands, simply because the viewpoint and the critical area that you'd always get in the wrecks was over there off of turn 4. So that was his solution for it. But now that we've rotated the corners around and we essentially stand in the middle of 3 and 4 and we're at the restart area, which is directly in front of us, we have a lot more advantage to prevent those kind of incidences, which is really what we are for, right? We might be in a performance advantage at some tracks, but we're about safety, and it's a little more safer on the restarts. Once they get going, man, they're going 2, 3, 4 wide. They can dive
way down there and spread out.
It's without a doubt the widest area available to the drivers on any track.
On a restart.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. It's fun to watch, but then they all have to funnel back down there in the new turn 1, and it really allows the lineup to get jumbled up. Great passing. It's fun to watch a Phoenix race because, again, we considered a short track because of the flat corners, but
not because of the distance.
Not because of the distance. Because again, if it was a little over a mile, I mean, Darlington's not much longer,
right?
But if the package of that track with the brake ducts and the flat corners, it really produces a short track style mentality.
And it's a lot of fun to watch. By the way, as we wrap up here, we want to make sure that you're aware that the Truck Series ran the first 3 events of the year. Now they are off until we get back to Martinsville, I believe.
Yep, Martinsville.
So they don't go to Phoenix ISM Raceway. They don't go to Auto Club Speedway in California, and then they come back. So we'll have this weekend right here on the Motor Racing Network, the Xfinity Series, the iK9 Service Dog 200, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Saturday on the Motor Racing Network. Sunday, the Ticket Guardian 500 comes your way at 2:30 Eastern Time. Kim Kuhn and I will have the pre-race show for you there as well. We'll also have full practice coverage, qualifying coverage at MRN.com. Make sure you're there for all of it. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. And again, don't forget that Tough Trucks of NASCAR podcast series. Episode 3 has dropped. 4 comes out this week. I'm Woody Kane. He's Joey Meyer. We'll see you right back here next Monday for another edition of MRN Out Loud.